In 2005, while Mark Zuckerberg was still figuring out how to expand Facebook beyond college campuses, two tech veterans had a radically different vision for social networking. Mark Andreessen, fresh off selling Netscape to AOL for $4.2 billion, and Gina Bianchini, a young Stanford MBA with Goldman Sachs experience, weren't interested in building another centralized social network. Instead, they wanted to democratize the entire concept. Their company, Ning, would let anyone create their own Facebook-style social network in minutes, complete with profiles, walls, photos, and all the features that made social networking addictive. It was an audacious bet that the future of social media wouldn't be dominated by a single platform, but rather a constellation of niche communities, each tailored to specific interests, causes, or demographics. The company name itself came from the Chinese word meaning peace, reflecting their utopian vision of giving every community its own digital home. With Andreessen's reputation and $44 million in initial funding, Ning launched as the anti-Facebook, the platform that would make Facebook irrelevant by making everyone their own Mark Zuckerberg. The timing seemed perfect. In 2005, Facebook was still restricted to college students, MySpace was cluttered and amateurish, and Friendster was already showing signs of decline. Ning's pitch was intoxicating in its simplicity. Why settle for being a small fish in someone else's pond when you could be the big fish in your own? The platform launched with an elegant interface that let users create fully featured social networks with just a few clicks. Want to build a network for vintage motorcycle enthusiasts? Done. Need a private social space for your extended family? Easy. Looking to create a fan community for an obscure indie band? Ning had you covered. The platform handled all the technical complexities: server management, database optimization, spam filtering, user authentication, while giving creators unprecedented control over their community's look, feel, and functionality. Early adopters were amazed at what they could accomplish without writing a single line of code. Within months of launch, thousands of networks were sprouting across Ning's servers, covering everything from professional associations to hobby groups to political movements. By 2008, Ning was riding high on the wave of social media expansion, hosting over 1.5 million social networks with more than 40 million users combined. The platform had become the go-to solution for organizations that wanted the benefits of social networking without surrendering control to Facebook or MySpace. Major brands like Nike and Ford were using Ning to build customer communities. Musicians were creating fan networks that they owned and controlled. Activists were organizing movements on platforms that couldn't be censored by corporate overlords. The diversity was staggering. Networks for everything from knitting enthusiasts to cryptocurrency traders, from local community groups to global environmental movements. Ning's business model seemed bulletproof. They charged monthly fees for premium features and custom domains, while offering basic networks for free to drive adoption. Revenue was growing steadily, reaching $15 million annually by 2009. The company raised an additional $60 million in funding, valuing Ning at over $750 million. Andreessen was hailed as a visionary who had cracked the code on social media's future, proving that the internet's natural tendency toward decentralization would ultimately triumph over the walled gardens of Facebook and Twitter. But even as Ning celebrated its growth milestones, the ground was shifting beneath their feet. Facebook had opened to the general public in 2006 and was experiencing explosive growth that dwarfed anything seen in internet history. By 2009, Facebook had 350 million users, nearly 10 times Ning's total user base across all networks combined. More troubling for Ning was what users were actually doing on their platform. Despite having the power to create their own social networks, most people weren't interested in being network administrators, community managers, or digital architects. They just wanted to connect with friends, share photos, and scroll through content. The dream of every niche interest having its own thriving social network ran headlong into the reality that social networking was fundamentally about reaching the largest possible audience. A photography enthusiast might join a Ning network dedicated to photography, but they'd spend 10 times more hours on Facebook where all their friends were already active. The network effect that powered Facebook's growth was simultaneously draining life from Ning's communities. Why post your best photo to a 200-member photography network when you could share it with your 500 Facebook friends? The math was brutal. and inescapable. The fundamental problem with Ning's vision became clear as Facebook's dominance solidified. Social networking wasn't about technology, it was about people, and people wanted to be where other people already were. Ning had solved a technical problem that turned out not to be the real barrier to social networking success. Creating the software was easy. Creating communities that people actually wanted to spend time in was nearly impossible. By 2010, the average Ning network had fewer than 50 active users, and the vast majority of the 2 million networks on the platform were essentially ghost towns. Users would create networks with great enthusiasm, invite a few friends, post some initial content, then gradually lose interest as they realized they were shouting into the void. The most successful Ning networks were often just redirecting their communities to Facebook groups anyway, using Ning as a temporary landing page rather than a permanent home. Even worse for Ning's business model, the networks that did achieve meaningful scale often migrated to cheaper or free alternatives once they'd proven their concept. Facebook Pages, launched in 2007, offered many of the same community-building features as Ning, but with access to Facebook's massive user base. Recognizing that their original vision was failing, Ning attempted several pivots starting in 2010. First, they abandoned their free tier entirely, betting that charging all users would eliminate dead networks and improve the quality of remaining communities. The move was a disaster, causing their network count to plummet from 2.3 million to just 100,000 almost overnight. Most of the eliminated networks were indeed inactive, but the sudden purge created negative publicity and reinforced the perception that Ning was a dying platform. Next, they tried repositioning as a premium solution for brands and organizations rather than a consumer platform. They added features like advanced analytics, professional design templates, and integration with marketing tools. While this attracted some corporate clients, it also alienated the grassroots creators who had been Ning's original evangelists. The platform's identity became confused. Were they a democratic tool for community building or an enterprise software solution for marketing departments? The company burned through leadership changes, with founder Gina Bianchini leaving in 2010 to pursue other ventures, followed by a succession of CEOs trying to find a sustainable path forward. Meanwhile, Facebook was systematically eliminating every advantage Ning once held. Facebook groups evolved to offer most of the community features that had made Ning attractive, but with access to Facebook's billion-plus user base. Facebook Pages gave brands and organizations professional presences without monthly fees. Facebook's developer platform allowed third-party applications that could recreate specialized functionality for niche interests. Most devastating of all, Facebook's advertising system made it easy for community organizers to reach exactly the audiences they were trying to serve, eliminating the need for separate platforms entirely. Why struggle to build a network of vintage car enthusiasts from scratch when you could run Facebook ads targeting people who liked classic automotive pages? The social media landscape that had seemed to promise infinite diversity was instead consolidating around a handful of mega platforms, each optimized for different types of content and interaction. Facebook dominated personal networking, Twitter owned real-time conversation, LinkedIn controlled professional networking, and specialized platforms like Instagram and YouTube captured specific content formats. By 2015, Ning was clearly in decline, hosting just 60,000 active networks with steadily falling engagement metrics. The company had laid off most of its staff and was essentially in maintenance mode, keeping existing networks running while abandoning any pretense of growth or innovation. The few networks that remained active were mostly niche communities that had been too invested in their Ning presence to migrate elsewhere, creating a kind of digital amber that preserved the dreams of social media's more decentralized past. Ning's monthly fees, which had seemed reasonable when they were competing with paid hosting services, now looked expensive compared to free alternatives on Facebook, Discord, or Reddit. The platform's design, once cutting-edge, began to look dated next to more modern interfaces. Mobile functionality, crucial for social networking after 2010, remained clunky and limited compared to native mobile apps from major platforms. Most tellingly, when tech blogs and social media experts compiled lists of platform alternatives or community-building tools, Ning rarely got mentioned anymore, having faded from relevance so gradually that its absence was barely noticed. The death blow came not from a single catastrophic event, but from the slow realization that Ning's core value proposition had become irrelevant. By 2016, anyone who wanted to build an online community had better, cheaper, and more effective options available. Facebook groups provided social networking features with built-in audiences. Slack offered superior communication tools for professional communities. Discord served gaming and hobbyist groups with voice chat and real-time interaction. Reddit delivered discussion forums with massive reach and sophisticated content discovery. YouTube enabled video creators to build subscriber communities around their content. Patreon let creators monetize their audiences directly. The specialized platform ecosystem that Ning had tried to replace with a single general-purpose tool had instead evolved into a rich landscape of focused solutions, each optimized for specific use cases and integrated with larger platform ecosystems. Ning's jack-of-all-trades approach couldn't compete with master-of-one alternatives that did specific things exceptionally well. On December 31, 2017, Ning officially shut down its social network creation platform, marking the end of one of social media's most ambitious experiments. The company sent final notices to its remaining network administrators, giving them months to export their data and migrate to alternative platforms. Most didn't bother. The communities that were still worth preserving had already moved elsewhere, and the remaining networks were maintained more out of nostalgia than active use. In its final financial reports, Ning revealed that it had never achieved sustained profitability despite raising over $100 million in venture capital and generating tens of millions in revenue over its 12-year lifespan. The platform that had once hosted millions of networks ended with just 15,000 active communities, most with fewer than a dozen regular users. Mark Andreessen, who had moved on to become one of Silicon Valley's most successful venture capitalists, rarely mentioned Ning in interviews, focusing instead on his investments in companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, the centralized platforms that had ultimately won the social media wars. The failure wasn't technological or operational, but conceptual. Ning had built a perfect solution to a problem that most people didn't actually have. They had democratized social network creation at exactly the moment when democracy in social media was being superseded by the convenience and network effects of centralized platforms. The dream of 1,000 social networks died when everyone realized they'd rather just be on the main Facebook, checking in on all their interests and communities in a single familiar interface rather than managing separate identities across dozens of specialized platforms.